What is the stupidest question you've ever heard anyone ask in class? Back in my high school history class, we were discussing the Vietnam War, and I raised my hand and asked, "Who is Agent Orange?" thinking it was a person. We had a Native American speaker come to my world religions class one day. He spoke to us about how missionaries came to his reservation and nearly destroyed their culture and their livelihood. He brought up how depressing and difficult it is to live in the U.S. Then a girl raises her hand and asks, "Well, if you don't like it here, why don't you just leave and go to a different country?" Please tell me how he responded to this question. Everyone in the class just looked at her like, "Are you effing kidding?" He said, "I will let your classmates answer that one for you." She got torn to shreds. She never came back to class. I am not usually down for tearing people down due to ignorance on a topic, but ma'am, if you are going to go about it in that way in a public setting, I'm sorry, but not a wise move. We were discussing forest fires that were going on somewhere in the Midwest at the time, and a girl asked, "How can the fires keep burning for more than one day? Do they start back up again every morning?" She literally thought that fires only burn in the daytime. This was in a college class. Ninth grade English teacher was collecting food and stuff to send to Japan after the tsunami, namely rice. Girl raised her hand and asked if it was to soak up all the water. Teacher's look of disappointment could be felt down to her soul. That girl is a effing genius. Biology teacher. Look at the person sitting next to you. You share 99% of your DNA with them. Student. Oh my God, is that why you did the seating chart this way? I love how the student thinks that the teacher's like setting up an episode of Maury. Yep, surprise. That person is your long-lost brother. Is that even a Maury kind of thing? Does anyone get the Maury reference? I'm old. In my social problems class, my very black professor asked us, "Why do you think in black households women tend to be the leaders and not the men?" About 10 seconds, some girl speaks up and says, "Is it because the dads are in jail?" We were talking about the moon in our 10th grade class, and this girl goes, "Is there still a moon?" Teacher, "What?" Girl, "Do we still have a moon?" The whole class was silent. Time traveler. I'm a high school teacher. We were discussing if you would be a different person if your parents named you differently. Clearly stoned student finds out I have a first name and is shocked. Then proceeds to ask, "Wait, Ms. Milky, what's your last name?" Mine can't be beat, although it isn't a question. This is in a 400-level philosophy class on Kant. Professor is the type to tell students they are wrong when they are wrong. Tough guy, but fair. We're talking about Kant's treating of God and empirical proof for God. Religious student. I saw God in a cracker. He's 100% serious. Professor. No, you didn't. I don't believe you. Show me. Religious student. I saw him. My faith told me that. It was him. I know it. It was a transcending experience. Professor. So, you saw objective evidence for God in a cracker. Can I see it? Religious student. No, I don't have it. Professor. Did you eat it? Student. Yes. Professor. So let me get this straight. You found real, unarguable proof for the existence of God, and you ate it. Student. Silence. Professor. You're going to have to understand why I'm not believing you here. Oh my God, either that student didn't understand why he should feel dumb, or he suddenly realized what he did and felt awful. Either way, I'm here for it. Wait, volcanoes are real? I thought they were made up. This was a high school freshman. Egypt's a real place? I thought it was just some place from Jimmy Neutron. Edit. Good God, so many people not knowing about Egypt. I should add that this was in a conversation to an Egyptian foreign exchange student, and right after she said it, she got up and did that dance where you have your elbows and wrists at right angles, and move your hands forward and backwards, whatever it's called. I was mortified, and thankfully it was the last day of class. But if evolution is true, why don't squirrels give birth to chipmunks? Broke my pencil in half upon hearing this particular gem. Pokemon logic. I really need to know the age of the person who asked this, because if it's any older than 10, my God. In a big lecture hall sociology class, we were learning about social mores. A student asked, "Is that what the song is about?" Professor, "What song?" Student, "When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore." Entire class stunned silence at the stupidity. Then the professor does the kid the biggest solid I've ever seen by saying, "Very funny." But the student wouldn't drop it and says he wasn't joking. Professor, "Trust me, you were joking." Class, uproarious laughter. "That's a moron." Girl I had freshman history with. Professor, "So, who can tell me about Pearl Harbor?" Girl, "Oh my God, I love that movie." Turns out, she didn't know the movie was based on a real-life attack on Hawaii. Also disconcerting that she not only liked it, but loved it. Yeah, not one of the better movies for Matt Damon or Ben Affleck. Really bad taste. This wasn't a question, but by far the dumbest statement I have ever heard made to a professor. Our black professor was talking about some book we were reading and referred to the main character as a black person. This girl puts her hand up and says, "Excuse me, Professor so-and-so, but they prefer the term colored people." He just stared at her and quietly said, "Oh, honey, no, no, no." This reminds me of a time a girl was very upset while we were talking about black Europeans. She calmly told us that they prefer African Americans. She could not wrap her head around why that was not correct. Overheard in London, American tourist family. The little girl referred to someone as black. The mother corrected her. "That's rude, honey. He's African American English." Is illegal good or bad? I always get them confused. Same girl was asked on a health test to name 3 common STDs and said AIDS, needles, and vaginal fluids. She got into university. To her credit, whether or not illegal is good or bad depends on who you're talking to and what you're talking about. Second semester of Spanish, prepping for the midterm, teacher says, "Now is the time to ask any question that you're unsure of." Girl in the front row, "Is there a difference between L and la?" Teacher didn't know what to do. "Is Australia in Europe?" Edit. The boy who asked this question did not mean Austria, he meant Australia. He said it 3 times. One time the teacher was talking about the country Austria and everybody kept saying, "You're saying it wrong, it's Australia," or "Don't you mean Australia?" I was saddened greatly by this. Good day, and welcome to Austria, birthplace of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Sigmund Freud, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, known for his famous line, "I'll be back, mate." Wait, so like the British were fighting for England? This was during a Western civilizations course. High school chemistry class. We were working on a lab where we had to make little squares on a piece of plastic to perform tests in, and the squares had to have 2-centimeter long sides. This kid at my lab table, who had already proven to be not so bright in class many times beforehand, got our teacher's attention, then asked what a centimeter was. After the teacher thoroughly explained what a centimeter is and where exactly to find them on the ruler in front of him, the student turned to us and said, "I'm still not understanding this centimeter thing. Why don't the terrorist countries have to follow the Constitution?" Questions like that you just don't know where to begin explaining. How far back, how deep is the knowledge hole? Do you know what a nation is, a country? Do you know what lies outside America? Do you know how words join together in sentences? Do you know how words convey knowledge? Do you know what a word is? Can you read? Did you just speak? This kid in my intro bio class, freshman year, first semester. He was a douche, chose to talk and crap during class, and never did his work. We had a case study to turn in at the halfway point of the year on a pharmaceutical drug of our choosing. He shows up on the due day with nothing. He raises his hand right when the professor walks in and says, "I crap you not, this is true. I have a note from my mom, can I get an extension?" In front of the entire 300-person class. Professor responds, "No, son, you cannot. Your mom cannot save you. This is not high school." I think the kid actually dropped out of school the next semester for flunking all of his courses. I once had a professor ask me for a note. It was the most awkward situation of my college career, especially as a non-traditional student. I forget why I was out, but the conversation went something like this. "Professor, Inked Muse, you were missing from class last Thursday." Me, "Yeah, sorry, I was ill." "Professor, do you have a note?" Me, I didn't go to the doctor." "Professor, a note from your mother would be fine." Me, I'm 26 years old and live with my husband. Wait for it. Professor, that's fine, just have him send a note. I transferred to a different university the next semester. See, folks, even college professors can be dumb sometimes. We're all a little dumb, and that's okay. I'm definitely not the brightest. U.S. history class. As a kid mentions William Penn, founder of Pennsylvania, some other kid asks, "Are their relatives still around?" My friend raises his hand and asked, if he still had relatives, wouldn't they be like 400 years old? Too long didn't read. Kid thinks people from colonial times are still alive. In my 10th grade history class, we were talking about when George Washington had 4 bullet holes in his coat jacket and had 2 horses shot out from under him. So the teacher asked if anybody knew which battle this happened in, and this girl in my class raises her hand and said Vietnam. I was honestly impressed with how stupid she was. We were talking about galaxies and how they form, and as the teacher was talking about how they form, one girl slowly raises her hand. The girl has asked some stupid crap before, so the teacher reluctantly calls on her, and she says, "If you throw a peanut into the universe, will it eventually become a galaxy of its own?" The teacher had a hard time trying to stay nice to her after that question. It's not that dumb of a question, it was just poorly worded. Basically, she was asking what amount of mass is needed to nucleate a galaxy. About to write our final exam for a calculus class. Professor, you have 90 minutes for this exam. Student, you told us we have an hour and a half. Rest of class and professor, facepalm. This was a university final exam. Just for clarification, it wasn't an elaborate joke. It was the person who asked simple, stupid questions the whole year. How do you get into calculus with this kind of understanding of numbers? I mean, I know reading a clock and differential who's-he-what's-its are different skill sets, but come on! In junior year of college, I was with a class in an anatomy lab looking at very dead, very naked, and very obviously male body. We were going over the body, and we got to the lower half where the deceased's twig and berries were prominently on display. The dim bulb of our group seized on a moment of silence to point to the man's genitals and ask the professor, "Are those the ovaries?" He was dumbstruck while the rest of us tried to contain laughter, but we all lost it when he said, "No, that is the penis," in his matter-of-fact German accent, and she just said, "Oh," and wrote it down in her notebook. I cannot even comprehend just what? Was this person neither male nor female and therefore had no idea of either? Was it an alien? Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. My teacher was talking about a story in Greek mythology where a king ate 3 children and then several days later someone gutted him and the children sprung out of his stomach to later become rulers of the kingdom. After the part about the gutting and the children leaping out of the dead king, this girl looked really confused and raised her hand. Did that really happen? My teacher had to explain to her that if you eat a child, there is no way they're going to live when you open up the person's stomach. Sounds like the story of Titan Kronos and the gods of Olympus. That's because it is. Ooh, we got a little multi-layer burrito of dumb stuff going on here. Delicious. Professor, Russia has had difficulty in dismantling their nuclear stockpile. Student, why don't they just aim them up? Professor, I'm sorry? Student, point the missiles up, shoot them, then blow them up in the sky. In a music theory class, we had this kid who, when the professor explained something, would raise his hand, repeat the information in the form of a question, and then add, "just to clarify," every damn time. I imagine you said "had" in that post, not because the class is now over, but because you are still in that class and you all ran that student out of there with torches and pitchforks. During a psych class, we were talking all about human reproduction. Near the end of the class, we were talking about periods and why women have periods, etc. This is something that I thought everyone who was in college would know because of high school intercourse ed classes, right? Wrong. This one guy puts up his hand and asks, when the unfertilized egg is discharged, what does a woman do with it? Our teacher kind of looked at him in disbelief, then had to explain to him that the egg is so tiny we wouldn't be able to see it. What do we need any more engineers? All of the bridges are already built. Edit. It was a girl in a women's studies course I took as an elective. My buddy and I, both mechanical engineers, always had a good laugh in that class. Someone's gotta run them trains. I believe those are called superconductors. But doesn't the sun revolve around the Earth? I was actually asked this question during a primary science unit for a primary education bachelor's degree. I was asked to help explain how to demonstrate the phases of the moon using the shoebox and torch method. As I was talking about how, one of the other students in my class dropped this on me. The whole class went silent and I was standing there not knowing what to say. Thankfully, the tutor/professor broke in and explained that she had an Earth-centric view. This girl was in her 3rd year of an education degree. 3rd year of a degree, 14th century concept of the solar system. In high school geometry, the teacher hands out the test. Each row of desks gets a different test to discourage cheating. Each test has the same questions, just arranged differently. 1 blue test, 1 green, 1 pink, etc. Teacher asks if anyone has any questions after giving the directions. Straight-faced, honest to God, a girl raises her hand and asks, "Does different colored paper come from different colored trees?" Crickets, followed by uncontrollable laughter from 25 students. Our teacher laughed so hard and explained the process of papermaking for so long that she canceled the test and rescheduled it for the following day. That was the plan all along. This is more genius than it is stupid. We were in Year 9 chemistry and we're discussing things like how everything kinda can become a solid if you go below a certain temperature. This one kid who was the top of the class in chemistry and physics sat there pondering, thinking about this stunning revelation. Solid air? Solid helium? In the end, he raises his hand with the stunned look of someone who had just discovered the Higgs boson and asked the life-changing question, Does that mean, like, you can get solid water? It was me. I think we all have these moments where we think we've figured out something truly incredible only to realize that someone else thought of it first. It's just, you usually have this thought while sitting in a smoke-filled room with hazy red eyes. Not a question, but in one of my elementary ed classes, there's this middle-aged woman who looks like she is straight out of the 90s. We had to give a book talk on a book of our choosing. Basically, you give some info about the book to inspire others to read it. She chose The 3 Little Pigs. Every student is winging it, just kind of saying stuff, but this woman comes up with a fat stack of note cards, and I knew I was in for a treat. So she begins by saying the typical stuff, author, illustrator, how difficult the book is to read. Then out of nowhere, she says, the book is 7 inches tall and 11 inches wide. No one else listed any measurements, so I was baffled. Why did she decide to measure the effing book? There had to be a reason. I looked at the rubric. One of the requirements was book length, as in how many pages. This woman saw that and measured the effing book, like with a ruler. That's some goddamn Amelia Bedelia crap right there. I looked straight down at my lap with my mouth covered so I wouldn't completely lose it. What sucks is that I looked around to share this moment with someone, and everyone was on their damn phone or something. It was like I was the only person to witness it. Well, OP, that's because that's a special moment just for you, and now you've shared. Thank you. In college intro to astronomy class, the girl up front responded with 2 miles when the professor asked the class for the diameter of Earth. I'm fairly certain any end-to-end measurement of our university exceeded 2 miles. The entire class laughed at her, which was what she deserved. In my early morning geography class, we were looking at some world maps on the board discussing World War II when a student raises his hand and asks what's on the other side of the world, since the map only shows half. As if no one had explored the other side of the world, like the dark side of the moon. No one laughed or said anything, we just ignored it entirely. We don't mention the dark side of the earth in polite company. In a geography course in my 3rd year of university, a friend of mine asked near the end of a lecture on the greenhouse effect, which she wasn't being 100% attentive in, why wouldn't they just stop building greenhouses? We will never let her live that down. Freshman bio class talking about DNA damage via free radicals and how some foods have antioxidants. Obnoxious super tan girl in front row. So, how many blueberries should I eat if I, tan twice a week? Enough to make you blue instead of orange. Who needs sunscreen? I always just eat a handful of blueberries before I go out to do yard work. I hate when students ask questions about personal family-related problems while in class. Professor, some patients with colon cancer will notice blood in their stools. Student, my uncle had blood in his stool last week, but the doctor told him it was hemorrhoids. Do you think he has cancer? I wish the professor would ask these students, did I see his anus myself? This was my life for 1.5 years when I was taking paralegal classes. Everybody seemed to be under the impression that the middle of class was an ideal time to get legal advice from the instructor. Most mortifying question I ever heard? Divorced lady who just refused to shut up about her ex totally monopolized the discussion with a guest speaker in my family law class. At the end, in front of everybody, she asks the attorney if he'd work for her pro bono. One of the most inappropriate things I've ever seen. Miss Professor, my friend, just had a baby, and I don't think she's feeding her enough. The only thing she feeds her is milk. Edit. I should clarify that this was said in a human development course during a class discussion on cultural differences in early infancy, specifically feeding. What is a normal age to start solid foods was what prompted this gem. Do you really think you can fail me? Through book and awaited response. Security called, student removed from class. Professor, this isn't high school anymore, people. Whining and outbursts gets you nowhere. How far apart are sea level and ocean level? Is it possible to measure since they're so far apart anyway? Apparently, he thought ocean level was the level of water at the beach and sea level was that of, I have no effing idea. This was during a college course. Edit. I'm getting a lot of interpretations, but she honestly thought when you're on the beach, you're at ocean level, and that the ocean and the sea are not the same thing, i.e., there's oceans and seas, so there's ocean level and sea level. If you went to the East Coast, there's an ocean, so you're at ocean level. And I guess when you're on a California beach, that could be sea, making you at sea level. I'm not really sure. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.